Jennifer, thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk with you today.
And same with me. I've been looking forward to this a lot. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I can't wait to dive into minerals because they are so important for all of us and our health. But before we get started, could you just tell us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So, like most healthcare practitioners, I started off because of a personal journey. So, I started off working in television, but I had a lot of problems with my polycystic ovarian syndrome. And that's what led me to see treatment from a naturopath and just the way it revolutionized my health. There was no more pain. There was no more discomfort. It's like, wow, I like this is actually possible to have more energy, more vitality. That I left my career and went and retrained as a naturopath. And this is what I've been doing for the last 20 years. So yeah, it helps to have, I think, because I've been there and done that, I've always worked in the hormone field. So I started off with other women that have also had different reproductive conditions, whether it's fibroids, polyps, ovarian cysts. Uh, and now I'm working more with menopausal women because as I've journeyed along my health journey, I've taken my women with me.
That's great. I know. And I do love how you're saying so many of us were really brought into this space when I'm talking with people that from a health, a personal health journey. So we take that, you see what it meant to you. And it really is so impactful when you can share that with other people.
Yes, yes. And I certainly started down the conventional route and I just wasn't seeing the results that I wanted. So you have to try something else because I feel that there's always something else that you can be doing. And sometimes you hit the nail on the head the first time. Sometimes you need to try different things and maybe even try things that you've never even heard of before to find what you're looking for.
Yes, I know. And it is true because it's like there's not just one approach and so many different approaches put together and really digging into what's working for you. And with women in particularly, I feel like we're so often told, oh, we're just fine, or oh, there's nothing, you feel like you're stuck in this place where you feel helpless. And so I think spreading the word out, that's what we're trying to do, is to help that, there's so many things you can do and we get to see that change in people every day. So that's great. So let's dive into talking about minerals. So let's just start with talking about what are minerals.
So minerals are essential building blocks for health. Our body cannot manufacture them. We actually need to consume them in order to have them. So minerals are generally found in the soil and the water, and we need to consume them. But they are absolutely essential. If you are deficient, it's linked in with suboptimal health and disease. Now, not a lot of people put the two to two together to say mineral deficiency can cause disease. Just think about an iron deficient woman with anemia, and that nothing apart from iron can actually resolve her anemia. So it's a fundamental building block. It's just unfortunate at this time, like where we are now, mineral deficiencies are at an all-time high. Dr. James, he's a medical researcher, and in his book, The Mineral Fix, he found that 1 out of 3 Americans have at least 10 mineral deficiencies. So we're not talking about singular issues, we're talking about multiple deficiencies across the board.
Yes. And so often these deficiencies aren't even checked. So I think it's just another point to that is that I remember before, again, I have a journey like you where I was on the conventional side of medicine and then I moved over to the functional medicine. And but years and years ago, before even I was back in the conventional side, I was at my primary care and I said, I just like want my iron checked. I want my magnesium checked. And I knew, and they said no. Like, how can you not just check my iron level? I mean, I was exhausted. I was having all of the symptoms of iron deficiency and they wouldn't even check it to see if it was a possibility. And that's what I think is really sort of misleading, because all you have to do then, like you're saying, is take an iron supplement that has good absorption and you can feel so much better. You can have your energy back. And sometimes it's as simple as that, but we're not being checked. And sometimes even when we are checked, we're not the levels really aren't optimal. They're just being accepted in these wide ranges.
Mm. Well, as we'll discuss as we move through, there are some things that will actually block your absorption. So it's great that you are making sure that you're putting that mineral in the first place, but it's what the body does with that mineral next that also matters. So we might as well move into that. So
Yeah.
the health of your digestive system in the first place. If you have any sort of inflammatory digestive conditions, it's going to be really hard to absorb any minerals that you might have consumed, whether it's via food or via a supplement. We look at whether there's any infections present. So things like Helicobacter pylori can definitely impact your ability to absorb nutrients. And we can also look at any medications. So say, for example, you're on an antacid, that's going to impact your ability. And it's things like this that contribute to it being multiple mineral deficiencies rather than a singular nutritional deficiency. So if they had found your iron, more than likely, if you dug a little bit deeper, you would have found other mineral deficiencies that piggybacked off that. So that's a consideration. We also need to look at, we've lost the art of food preparation. So things like sprouting, fermenting, soaking, these traditional techniques that would have been used by our ancestors help take out the anti-nutrient components of foods. So you might have heard of things like phytates and tannins and goitrogens. These are all natural components found in food that bind to our minerals, but we don't have the enzymes to break down that anti-nutrient. Therefore, the mineral's lost to us. So if we were to soak or ferment or to sprout those certain foods, you reduce the amount of anti-nutrients, and therefore you get more bang for your buck with the food that you're eating. You're getting more nutrition. So we also need to make sure that we're getting the right foods in the first place. So many people are on ultra processed diets. So they're not eating foods that have nutrition in them in the first place. Or maybe you are eating really well, but it's a really restrictive diet where maybe you're missing out on food groups, or maybe you've got issues with allergies or sensitivities, so you're not eating salicylates or amines. These are massive, big food groups. So that comes back to the health of the gut. We really need to make sure that the gut is functioning optimally so that we can eat and tolerate a wider variety of food. We also need to look at the soils. So are we eating from conventional farms? Are we eating from organic or regenerative farms? Because the soil quality counts. When we're looking at conventional farming, I think it's roughly a 30 to 40% reduction in nutrients in the soils compared to, say, the 1940s. If the nutrients aren't in the soil, they're not going to be taken up by the plant for us to consume. So we're eating foods that are less dense than they were in the past. Therefore, we're not getting nutrients. And so one more point, then I'll let you take a word, is environmental pollutants. Because we know that these pollutants compete for absorption with our minerals. Now, when you were on my podcast, we spoke a little bit about iron. Oh, sorry, lead. And we are the lead generation. So lead growing up was in our fuel, was in our paint, was all around us. And lead likes to be stored in our bones. So then when we hit our 40s, 50s, 60s and beyond, and our bones start to break down, this lead is re-released into the system, and lead competes with calcium for absorption. So if we can't get our calcium, then we're also going to have more issues with bones moving forward. But that's just one example. Like if you eat a lot of seafood, there could be a lot of mercury, and that really competes with things like selenium and zinc. So your environment matters. I've briefly touched on metals, but we also have issues with chemicals and molds. And just going back to chemicals for a moment, you've got to really think about your skincare routine. Like we put so many chemicals on our body every day, and the skin is highly absorbent. It's going to take those chemicals in, and those chemicals are going to also compete with the binding sites for our different minerals. So just a couple of things to think about, and you can see why it's a bigger issue now than it potentially was in the past.
Yeah, it's because we're exposed to so many more chemicals. And I think it is tricky. You made a good point, and I know we did talk about that on your podcast with the lead, and how when you are exposed to lead, even as a child, maybe you were around lead paint or something, and then it's stored in your bones, and it doesn't. So some of these things are maybe things that you aren't feeling like you're exposed to because you're not exposed to them right now. But we need to look at your overall whole history of exposure. So it doesn't always mean that just because you're not in that environment right now that you can't be holding on to that. And I think that can be confusing to people sometimes because we're not always going back to that whole health history to look at everything. It's just like, okay, we're in the moment for what we're feeling right now.
And sometimes it just helps to test, to find out. Just say, look, I'm not aware. I don't know what I was potentially exposed to as a child. Let's test. Let's see if anything surprising pops up so that we can deal with it, because you don't need to carry it on moving forward. You can detoxify it and feel that little bit healthier.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, so we want to make sure that we all know that the soil is less deficient, is more deficient in minerals. We want to make sure that we're trying to get those minerals. And then you made a good point too on making sure that the minerals are actually absorbed. So if you have underlying gut health issues, then even if I always tell that to people, like, even if you're eating the most healthy diet in the world, if you're not able to absorb those nutrients, then you're not really getting the benefit from that food that you would expect.
Mm. And that's where I really love transdermal creams. If there is digestive issues and you know that you're not getting the absorption that you could potentially be getting, you can look at using transdermal creams as a way of getting your minerals in via the skin and really just going around the digestive tract. So I found it works really well. And we'll get into minerals more later on, but with iron in particular. So I personally, with my reproductive journey, have struggled a lot with anemia. And I know at times there's only so much iron I can take before my gut becomes compromised, before I start feeling constipated, where you can get a massive big dose. So I might orally be taking, say, 25 milligrams, where topically I might be taking 100, 150 milligrams. So it's just a really nice way to get a bigger dose in if you need it without having to, like, there's no way I could orally take 100 milligrams. That would, constipation city, sign me up. But yeah, there's some minerals that really absorb well through the skin, and I've had good results with iron, and I've had good results with magnesium. Actually, that's my nighttime routine at the moment. Is I have a shower in the evening, and instead of putting moisturizing cream on, I rub magnesium cream into my legs. And I'm sure we'll chat about magnesium later because it's the
Yeah, it's
big
the
mineral.
big, yeah.
And in your clinic, with all the
Yes.
headache sufferers that you're helping, I'm
Yeah.
sure it's an everyday thing. Just rubbing that into my legs. And I found a massive difference with my sleep. Like, I used to say that I have a washing machine sleep. I'm just on spin cycle all night. And I don't notice that anymore. It's just really, it's a nice way when you've also got fatigue of taking pills. Like, you're looking at what you've got to take in a day, and it's like,
Yes.
But vitamins too, like B12 is a good one that also comes through the skin.
Yes. Well, let's dive into what are the most common mineral deficiencies.
Yes, so definitely magnesium.
Yeah.
So I specialize in helping women in perimenopause and menopause. And what I call magnesium the master menopause mineral. A lot of women aren't aware that excessive sweating. So whether you're in menopause or not in menopause, if you're an excessive sweater, it is a sign of deficiency. Put that aside. Signs of deficiency across the board, anything that is an inability to relax. So magnesium is a relaxant. So things like brain fog, anxiety, headaches, eye twitches, jaw tension, heart palpitation, those really painful, deep leg cramps, that restlessness, insomnia, fatigue. What else do you see in your clinic with
Yeah.
magnesium? Do you like, it's a big long
Magnesium
list,
is,
isn't it?
yeah, constipation,
Oh,
different,
yeah.
yeah, even that's, yes, there's so many
Osteo
things.
osteoporosis, so if there's any issues with bone density. So
Yes.
you can, I get, does over 300 things in the body. So we could be here all day rattling off the list.
Yes.
But I always like to say before you run out and grab a mineral, and because the idea here today isn't for you to run out and grab a whole lot of supplements and to self-prescribe. I just want to say that all minerals come with cautions, contraindications, and potential medication interactions. So it's worth, if you hear something you like, going back to your healthcare provider or to your pharmacist and just say, I've heard about this. Can you check, is it something that's potentially suitable for me? Is there any interactions with my medications? But magnesium is generally very safe. The biggest issue I've seen is if you take too much, you can get diarrhea. And that could be the wrong form, or it could be that you've taken too much. But generally, it's a very beautiful mineral that just helps you unwind and relax your body, mind, and spirit.
Yes, I see that when people are deficient in magnesium and they start it as one that's like, oh, I just feel better. So many things. Yes.
Definitely my favorite, my personal favorite. It's one that you feel. Sometimes you take some things and you don't feel, but magnesium, yeah, I love it.
Yes. Okay. So we have iron, we have magnesium. What are some other ones? When you say the 10 most common, what are some other ones that you regularly see?
Yeah, what might surprise your listeners is sodium.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of us grew up with the low salt diet, and I think that has been unjustifiably vilified, because really when we look at a lot of things that we used to think fats were bad, we now know there are good fats and there are bad fats. And I think it's the same with salt. We have good salts and we have bad salts. So when we're talking about highly processed table salt, bad salt. When we're talking about highly processed foods, bad salt. When we're talking about natural salts, when we're talking about electrolytes, these are all absolutely beneficial, essential salts. Getting back to the demographic of people, that women that I see, is that menopause is a time of a greater need for salt. Because if you're sweating, so hot flushes, night sweats, you're sweating, you're losing salt. If you're in perimenopause and you're having a lot of heavy bleeds, you're losing salt. So it's really a good time to top it back up. And I generally, I like to start with what I call a 7-day electrolyte challenge, where I get my women to start taking in electrolyte every day for 7 days and just see how they feel at the end. And I have not yet met a woman who hasn't noticed something, whether they've got a little bit more bounce in their step, whether they've got some more energy, a little bit more mental clarity, less leg cramps. I know you're a fan of electrolytes.
Yeah.
What do you notice?
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that, because I actually ran out of my electrolytes, and I had to reorder them, and I was noticing that I was craving them. So I was actually having cravings for which you don't usually crave drinks, I would say, but I was having, so it was interesting because I knew, I was like, my body's telling me like, I really want that. That's something that you need to give it back to me, because I would be thinking about my drink and really craving that. So your body is telling you something of like, okay, this is serving you. And I think that we've never been educated that much on the fact that we do need electrolytes in our water, and that's something good to drink. And it's particularly, I don't know about you, but I have a water filter, because then, we could have a whole nother conversation on what's really in your water. But when you go down that rabbit hole, it's nice to have a reverse osmosis water filter sometimes that cleans all the things we don't want in our water, but it also is cleaning out the minerals. So especially if you have a water filter on your house system, or use a portable water filter, it's even more important to have those electrolytes.
Absolutely. But it's number one, you need clean water. So that's
Yeah.
important.
Yes.
You can add minerals back in later, like you were suggesting, adding the electrolytes in later on. Are you all right if I tell you a patient story?
Yes. Mm-hmm, absolutely.
So I had a woman come to see me who 4 nights a week had to wake up her husband to get him out of bed to change the sheets. Her night sweats were that bad.
Wow.
And that had been going on for 12 months. Can you imagine what that does
Yeah.
to a
Yes.
relationship? And
Mhm.
when you're sweating that much, you're depleting and depleting, further depleting your sodium levels. So when we had our first consult, I said to her, I'm just going to start you on an electrolyte while we run some tests. When we came back, her test results were in, we were going to have a chat. Just the electrolytes. That was the only change we made in that time. She'd gone from 4 nights a week to 2 nights in the month.
Wow.
That it was
Yeah.
just topping up her levels, had actually broken that electrolyte deficiency cycle that she was in. And she couldn't believe it. She's like, that's all
Yeah.
I did was my electrolytes.
Wow.
Because you are sweating, you're losing salts.
Mm-hmm.
And women don't realize just how much they're actually losing. And I know your podcast, you've got men, you've got women. Men sweat a lot too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're working
Mm-hmm.
out, if you're
Yeah.
doing saunas, if you know you're a sweater, then you
Mm-hmm.
need to put these electrolytes back in. Now, we haven't spoken about what kind of electrolytes. I normally say clean electrolytes because we
Mm-hmm.
podcast, you've got people all around the world, you have
Yes.
different brands in different locations. What we're looking for is something that is clean. So unflavored, no preservatives, no um, colors. We certainly don't want a sports drink that's full of colors and preservatives and flavors. We want a clean product. Mine's a concentrate that I add to water. Is that what yours is as well?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's so simple. And look, for people that have never tried it, it's going to be a mouthful of salt. It's going to be,
Mm-hmm.
whoa, that's a lot. So you might want to start with a half dose and do that twice a day rather than a full dose. And just slowly increase the amount that you're having because your palate will get used to the flavor. And like you said, you will crave it. You will want it.
Yes. I know you miss
Mm,
it when it's gone then.
yeah, a lot of women don't realize actually that sugar cravings can all actually be the body confused and actually be a salt craving. So if you are coming up to this time of year, having a bit more
Mhm.
sugar than maybe you should do, maybe the electrolytes might help curb that sugar craving that you're having.
Yes, that's a great point.
Mm.
Yeah, so now those are really helpful. So we're adding so we have sodium
Yeah. Oh,
and
actually,
yes.
a point
Uh-huh.
I forgot to make.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, no problem.
If your doctor has told you to be on a low sodium diet or a low potassium diet, I don't know your medical history.
Yes. Hmm.
Go back and chat to your doctor, your medical team, and just say, I'm thinking of adding in an electrolyte. Is this going to be safe for me? Most times it is, but I don't know your history and I don't know why you were told that. So just check.
Yeah, no, that's an important point. For any of these that we're making recommendations that we're talking about, you always want to go back to your healthcare provider because even things, we were talking earlier about iron, you can definitely take too much iron too. That's another one that can be too much. So just always check because your provider will know your history and know what to recommend for you specifically because sometimes and that's what the testing and that's why I love testing because we know like there's certain big ones, but when we see those tests and we actually can see your specific needs, then we can tailor it to what you individually need.
Yeah, and if we do recommend something like iron, we're going to retest to go, right, what's your levels doing? Are the levels going up or do we want them to go down? And then we can change your program depending on what your needs are at that time. You certainly wouldn't start something and continue with it long term without rechecking.
Yes, absolutely. So what would be another one that you see regularly?
Ooh, how about we chat about zinc?
Yes, I love
Because
zinc too.
a lot of women think zinc and they think immunity. And yes,
Hmm.
it's fabulous for immunity. It's also fabulous for your senses, your eyesight, your hearing, your smell, your taste. Beautiful for that. But a lot of women don't put the connection in with the reproductive system. So it's fabulous for any kind of growths in the uterus. So whether polyps, fibroids, these kind of things. There's research looking at not stopping the growth, but reducing the size. And ultimately, it's size that counts when it comes to these kind of growths. It's also very good for balancing out hormones, and it's really good for both fertile women, perimenopausal women, and postmenopausal women when it comes to hormone balance. It does slightly different things at different stages, but it's just a good one to keep front of mind when it comes to hormones. Actually, there was a very interesting trial I looked at for postmenopausal women, helping to increase sexual satisfaction and lubrication. So obviously, if lubrications, there's so many different things you can do for that. But it was just nice to see that in this trial, they had women split in two: women that they gave a placebo, women that they gave zinc, and the zinc group stated greater sexual satisfaction at the end of the trial. So multifactorial, I know.
Yeah, it's more than just immunity. That's
Yeah.
great. Yes.
So what are some of your favorite minerals that you use?
Yeah, well, so it's a lot of the same ones that you do. I mean, I use a lot of zinc, and I think that's another one that's commonly deficient. I see a lot of the zinc deficiencies. I see a ton of magnesium deficiencies. We look at, I do see iron regularly. So these are all ones very similar to what you use. And then, we do, like you said, we do testing, we see what's deficient, we supplement or try to add what we can. I am a believer of adding what we can in with diet. So what we can get through diet, you need to make sure that your gut function is right and that you're healthy. But try that. But I think there are needs that sometimes go beyond diet, especially with some of the nutrient deficiencies in the soil, that sometimes we need to target supplements for people, especially when you're having certain symptoms.
Yeah, I don't think we spoke about regenerative farming. So many
No.
people have heard of organic farming, where organic farming focuses on not having pesticides and herbicides and just being a more natural product. It does look at the soil, but not as much as regenerative farming. So regenerative farming focuses on soil quality first. And they also don't use pesticides and herbicides and those kind of chemicals. So it's worth having a look. There's a website, regenerationinternational.org. And what it is a global map. You can put in where you live and they'll tell you where your local farms are. If you've got one close to you, fantastic, because if there's more nutrients in the soil, there's more nutrients in your food. If you don't have one, then organic's the next best place. They're similar, but when you're looking at the nutritional content of food, regenerative farms slightly pops above organic farms. And if it's out of your price range to eat these kind of foods, then I would recommend starting with the Clean 15 and the Dirty Dozen from the Environmental Working Group.
Yes. That's
Do
a great
you
place to
recommend?
start. Yes. And I can link that in to the show notes. So it's ewg.org. And then they give a list of the Environmental Working Group gives a list of the foods that are better to prioritize organic and ones that you don't. If you have to choose, organic always is better potentially, but if you have to choose ones that don't matter as much when we're shopping in organic food.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's great. Yes.
One thing we didn't mention when we're talking about things like iron and zinc is copper.
Mm-hmm.
So I personally test the copper zinc ratio, and then I would also have a look at that, because copper and zinc also compete for absorption and we need both of them. But what we generally see when we're looking at the ratio, so it's not just the amount of minerals you've got, it's a ratio between all the other minerals as well, which is where it can get complicated. But what we're finding as a society is that we're having a lot more copper and a lot less zinc. And this can cause issues with social withdrawal and isolation, which we've already had a lot of that over the last couple of years. So it's just something else to consider. It's quite an easy test to do if you're already doing testing. The only time, actually, I don't think I've ever seen it the other way around. It always seems to be that copper.
Yeah.
Really
So the copper, and that's particularly with people who are vegan or vegetarian, aren't getting a lot of animal meat. You see more copper dominance. But one thing I don't know, if you've seen this, but I have also seen though right now, because whenever people started taking, it got popular to take zinc for immunity, which we see the benefits. We talked about the benefits, but also another thing that started to happen where some people were taking really high doses of zinc
Ah,
on a regular basis. And then you were getting out of balance with copper because you
mm,
were overloading your body so much on that zinc. So when you're taking zinc, again, like we need to make sure that you're taking the right amount of zinc and that you're not overloading so that you're not out of balance with copper. So,
yes. And copper's so important for blood health because
mhm.
copper builds your ceruloplasm, which holds your iron, which then gives you the ability to produce red blood cells. So it's all of them are important. It's about finding the right amount, the right ratio, and yeah, it can get
And-
confusing and complicated, which is sometimes, you should reach out to a healthcare professional and seek some guidance. But when you get it right, boy, you feel good. So
yes.
much energy, so much vitality. It's worth the journey.
And when you look at food, I think sometimes we just think of food as our taste and what we're hungry for, but all our food, so many particular of our vegetables have all of these nutrients in them. So when you actually think about what you can get in your body from some of the food that you choose, really to get all, like you're saying, all of these have a purpose. We need to have all of the minerals. We don't just need one or the other. The food combinations can be what really provide such a wide variety of minerals, which I think is not, educated a whole lot on the value. I mean, we all know that we need to eat vegetables, that we need to eat fruits, but some of the depth of why we need to eat them, we're talking about because they contain some of these things that we need to be able to get in our body.
And so many people become creatures of habit where maybe they like apples. So the only fruit they ever eat is apples,
Yes.
or their favorite vegetable might be carrots, and all they ever eat is carrots. So it also helps to highlight why you need a variety of food, why you should put something new in your shopping trolley every week. It's like, oh, I don't know what that is, or I haven't had that for a while. Pop it in because it's going to have a different nutritional profile than what you're eating every day. So if you take anything away, it's to eat a wide variety of food from a rainbow of different colors so that you have the opportunity to get that full spectrum of nutrients in.
And when my kids were little, I printed out a rainbow on the refrigerator. It wasn't actual rainbow. It would be like the color and then what vegetables and fruits were in that color. And I would have them play a game to try to eat one from a different color every day. So, or how many they could get from different colors every day. So it makes it just was kind of fun. It was a challenge. So, you could try that or you could try it with your kids or something to just give yourself a challenge to see how many different colors you can get in your diet in a day to get these variety of nutrients.
I love that you gamified it. Like you're
Yeah.
making it fun. You're making being healthy fun. Where so many people say, "Oh, it's so much to think about. It's a burden." It's not a burden. And in your case, it's fun.
Yeah.
I wish I did that, but I didn't
Yeah,
do that with my
yeah.
kids.
Well, with my kids, I feel like I had to make challenges, games. It's all about the way you frame it because it's all about how you say like, okay, we're gonna do this and it's gonna be fun and we're gonna try to get colors and then it's a happy thing rather than like, okay, I'm gonna make you eat these vegetables today. And so yeah,
Why didn't you eat
exactly.
your Brussels sprouts? Like,
Exactly.
I had
Yes.
something else that was green.
I know, but
Yeah.
that's a good point because it is about framing and your perspective, and it doesn't have to be complicated or hard. That's kind of we're talking about things you can do to be healthier that make them entertaining or exciting or trying. And like, I bet you could try new things. Like think, okay, what's one new food I'm going to try every week to make a little adventurous or things like that, just to get this variety into your diet.
Love it.
Yes.
All on board.
Yes. Well, you've been giving us, I love the topic of minerals. I think they're so important and I love all the information you've shared. So can you tell everyone where they can find more about you?
So my website is Menopause Natural Solutions. I also have a podcast with the same name in which Meg was a guest on recently, and social media, all the same name, Menopause Natural Solutions. If today's topic interests you, I did actually create a free ebook. So sorry if you're not anywhere near menopause, but it was Minerals for Menopause, and I've given Meg the address the link to get it.
It will be in the show notes. Well, thank you so much for being here today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.